Hey, good morning, everyone. Hey, over the past 4 weeks now, we've been in a series of sermons on honoring God. We have seen during each week that how we honor God is more about how we live our lives. We've learned that we need to live a life of worship, a life of gratitude, prioritizing our time with God, and purifying our heart and actions. Today we look at honoring God by living generously. Now, before we start, we need a little bit of congregational input. So, this is one of those would you rather. Would you rather get tickets to go to a music concert of your favorite band artist? Or would you rather have a gift card to go shopping at your favorite store? So who would choose concert? Oh, Ellie, I know what concert you want. Y'all heard of that Taylor Swift thing? All right, who chooses a gift card? Go shopping. Oh, yeah, see? Ooh, it's a divide. Oh, no. All right. You see, we each have different ideas about what is valuable. What is valuable to one person is worthless to someone else. Let me take example of this nice little key ring I have. To some, my key ring would be worthless. No, that's just a key ring. But you see, my grandpa gave me that key ring when I was learning to drive. To me, it has meaning. And I've carried that for about 38 years now. So a little bit of meaning. Now, we also show what we value by who we spend time with. Okay? Hopefully we spend time with our family. Hopefully we spend time with our church family. But most importantly, hopefully we're spending some time with Jesus. Because the closer you get with Him, the more you know Him. And the more you know Him, the more you want to follow what He commands. Now, today we're going to be looking at the parable of talents. And Gary, during a great communion meditation, he shared a little bit about that. But what we need to do first is we need to look at what was going on when Jesus shared this parable with His disciples so that we can understand this parable a little bit better. And so we look back a little bit into chapter 24 of Matthew. And I want to read what the first 14 verses talk about. And let's see if you can kind of figure out what Jesus is going to. As Jesus was leaving the temple grounds, His disciples pointed out to Him the various temple buildings. But He responded, "Do you see all these buildings? I tell you the truth, they will be completely demolished. Not one stone will be left on top of another." Later, Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives. His disciples came to Him privately and said, "Tell us, when will all this happen? What sign will signal your return and the end of the world?" Jesus told them, "Don't let anyone mislead you. For many will come in my name claiming I am the Messiah. They will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and threats of wars, but don't panic. Yes, these things must take place, but the end won't follow immediately. Nation will go to war against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in many parts of the world. But all this is only the first of the birth pains, with more to come. Then you will be arrested, persecuted, and killed. You will be hated all over the world because you are my followers. And many will turn away from me and betray and hate each other. And many false prophets will appear and will deceive many people. Sin will be rampant everywhere, and the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. And the good news about the kingdom will be preached throughout the whole world, so that all nations will hear it, and then the end will come. All right, so what's Jesus talking about? The end of times. Now, wait a minute. I thought we were talking about generosity, living generously. We'll get there. We'll get there. Now, Jesus continued to go into Matthew 25 when he was talking with the disciples. And what he did in Matthew 25 is he started out with some parables. The parables were used to help them understand what he had just said to them in Matthew 24. Okay? And he started with the parable of the 10 virgins, and then, as we will be looking at today, the parable of the talents. Jesus was wanting his disciples to better understand what he had just told them. As we go through this sermon today, we're going to go back and forth between Matthew 25 and Matthew 24. Okay? So, here's what I want you to picture. How many of you like Westerns? Do you like the old Westerns? Okay. When Ryan was here, he used this example in something else, but I'm using it for here, for this purpose. Do you remember The Good and the Bad and the Ugly? Clint Eastwood. I thought about getting Ethan's cowboy hat and wearing it up here again, but I thought, I won't go there. So the first thing you got sideways, guns at the side, sun at his back, right? All right, well, let's see where the setting takes place in Matthew 25, 14 to 18. And this begins the parable. Again, the kingdom of heaven can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one, 2 bags of silver to another, and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportions to their ability. He then left on his trip. All right, you got the picture? Okay. So a servant or a master of property has left his belongings with his servants. Okay. Now let's take a look at Matthew 24. Matthew 24, we've got verses 42 to 44. So you too must keep watch, for you don't know what day your Lord is coming. Understand this. If a homeowner knew exactly when a burglar was coming, he would keep watch and not permit his house to be broken into. You also must be ready all the time, for the Son of Man will come when least expected. All right, you got the setting? You got the characters? Okay. All right, let's talk about the good now. Let's take a look back at Matthew 25, verses 19 through 23. This is back in the parable. After a long time, their master returned from his trip and called them to give an account of how they had used his money. The servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 5 more. The master was full of praise. Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." The servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, "Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 2 more." The master said, "Well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount. So now I give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together." Doesn't it remind you of your kids when they were little? "Mommy, Daddy, I made this for you. I drew this for you." Are you wanting to please the Father? All right. Let's take a look at Matthew 24. Go back to what Jesus was telling them. And this starts with verse 45 to 47. "A faithful, sensible servant is one to whom the master can give the responsibility of managing his own other household servants and feeding them. If the master returns and finds that the servant has done a good job, there will be a reward. I tell you the truth, the master will put that servant in charge of all he owns." Okay? All right, we're going to go to the bad now. I don't have the sound effects, but some of you may remember it. All right, back to Matthew 25, verse 24 through 27. "Then the servant with the 1 bag of silver came and said, 'Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant, gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I hid it in the earth. Look, here is your money back.' But the master replied, 'You wicked and lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops and I didn't plant, and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you deposit my money in the bank? At least I could have gotten some interest on it.'" Uh-oh, somebody's being punished. All right. What had Jesus told them in Matthew 24 about this? Matthew chapter 24, we'll look at verses 48 and 49. "But what if the servant is evil and thinks, 'My master won't be back for a while,' and he begins beating the other servants, partying, and getting drunk?" Ooh. All right. So we've seen the good. Those who took care of their master's money, took care of what the master had given them, and multiplied it. The bad hid it, not thinking of others. Well, now we're going to see the ugly of it. All right, Matthew 25, this is verse 28 through 30. This is back to the parable. "Then he," the master of the house, "ordered, 'Take the money from this servant and give it to the one with the 10 bags of silver. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away.'" "Now, throw this useless servant into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." That's the ugly of it, isn't it? What did Jesus tell them in Matthew 24? When we look at verse 50 and 51, Jesus said the master will return unannounced and unexpected. And he will cut the servant to pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. All right, now you're going, Jennings, what in the world are you talking about? I thought this was about living generously. Still don't see it? Okay. Well, let's see what we can get out of this. The first thing that we can see in this parable is that obedience brings blessings. Okay? I want us to take a look at Deuteronomy chapter 28. We're going to look through the first 14 verses. And in Deuteronomy 28, this is what Moses shared with the Israelites before they took possession of the promised land. If you fully obey the Lord your God and carefully keep all his commands that I am giving you today, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations of the world. You will experience all these blessings if you obey the Lord your God. And here they are. Your towns and your fields will be blessed. Your children and your crops will be blessed. The offspring of your herds and flocks will be blessed. Your fruit baskets and breadboards will be blessed. Wherever you go and whatever you do, you will be blessed. The Lord will conquer your enemies when they attack you. They will attack you from one direction, but they will scatter from you in seven. The Lord will guarantee a blessing on everything you do and will fill your storehouses with grain. The Lord your God will bless you in the land he is giving you. If you obey the commands of the Lord your God and walk in his ways, the Lord will establish you as his holy people, as he swore he would. Then all the nations of the world will see that you are a people claimed by the Lord, and they will stand in awe of you. The Lord will give you prosperity in the land he swore to your ancestors to give you, blessing you with many children, numerous livestock, and abundant crops. The Lord will send rain at the proper time from his rich treasury in the heavens, and will bless all the work you do. You will lend to many nations, but you will never need to borrow from them. If you listen to these commands of the Lord your God that I am giving you today, and if you carefully obey them, the Lord will make you the head and not the tail. Well, there's other names for that too, aren't there? And you will always be on the top and never on the bottom. You must not turn away from any of the commands I am giving you today, nor follow after other gods and worship them. Isn't it funny how history repeats itself over and over? Now, isn't that cool that God promised all those things as blessings? If you what? If you obey. Well, the second thing we can get out of the parable of the 10 talents is that disobedience brings disaster. Again, we go back to Deuteronomy chapter 28. Let's find out what happens if we're disobedient. But if you refuse to listen to the Lord your God and do not obey all the commands and decrees I am giving you today, all these curses will come and overwhelm you. Your towns and your fields will be cursed. Your fruit baskets and breadboards will be cursed. Your children and your crops will be cursed. The offspring of your herds and flocks will be cursed. Wherever you go and whatever you do, you will be cursed. The Lord himself will send on you curses, confusion, and frustration in everything you do, until at last you are completely destroyed for doing evil and abandoning him. The Lord will afflict you with diseases until none of you are left in the land you are about to enter and occupy. The Lord will strike you with wasting diseases, fever and inflammation, with scorching heat and drought, and with blight and mildew. These disasters will pursue you until you die. The skies above you will be unyielding as bronze, and the earth beneath will be as hard as iron. The Lord will change the rain that falls on your land into powder, and dust will pour down from the sky until you are destroyed. The Lord will cause you to be defeated by your enemies. You will attack your enemies from one direction, but you will scatter from them in seven. You will be an object of horror to all the kingdoms of the earth. Kind of scary to start thinking of those in those terms, isn't it? Third thing that we can look at when we read the parable of the talents. Be generous with God's blessings to you. Now, this one, we're going to look at 1 Kings chapter 10 here. And 1 Kings chapter 10 is when Bathsheba came to see Solomon. And if you remember, when Solomon became king, he asked God for one thing only: wisdom. Give me your wisdom, God. But because he shared his wisdom with others, Solomon became the richest king who was ever on the earth. Let's take a look at this. When the Queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's fame, which brought honor to the name of the Lord, did you catch that? Which brought honor to the name of the Lord. She came to test him with hard questions. She arrived in Jerusalem with a large group of attendants and a great caravan of camels loaded with spices, large quantities of gold and precious jewels. When she met with Solomon, she talked with him about everything she had on her mind. Solomon had answers for all her questions. Nothing was too hard for the king to explain to her. When the Queen of Sheba realized how very wise Solomon was, and when she saw the palace he had built, she was overwhelmed. She was also amazed at the food on his tables, the organization of his officials and their splendid clothing, the cupbearers and the burnt offerings Solomon made at the temple of the Lord. She exclaimed to the king, "Everything I heard in my country about your achievements and wisdom is true. I didn't believe what was said until I arrived here and saw it with my own eyes. In fact, I had not heard the half of it. Your wisdom and prosperity are far beyond what I was told. How happy your people must be. What a privilege for your officials to stand here day after day listening to your wisdom. Praise the Lord your God." Oh, now she's praising Solomon's God. "Praise the Lord your God who delights in you and has placed you on the throne of Israel. Because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel, he has made you king so you can rule with justice and righteousness." Then she gave the king a gift of 9,000 pounds of gold, great quantities of spices and precious jewels. Never again was so many spices brought in as those the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. In addition, Hiram's ships brought gold from Ophir, and they also brought rich cargoes of red sandalwood and precious jewels. The king used the sandalwood to make railings for the temple of the Lord and the royal palace, and to construct lyres and harps for the musicians. Never before or since has there been such a supply of sandalwood. King Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba whatever she asked for, besides all the customary gifts he had so generously given. Then she and all her attendants returned to their own land. It was God's wisdom that he was sharing. It was God's wisdom and the sharing of that wisdom that led him to prosperity. So are you still thinking, I don't see what any of this has to do with being generous or living a generous life? What is the one thing that you should treasure more than anything? I hope it is your relationship with Jesus. I hope it is your salvation. So what does this mean? What it all boils down to is we should be generously sharing Jesus with others by using what God has blessed us with. So the question today is, are you sharing Jesus with others? Now we're going to have a time of invitation. And praise team, if you want to come back up, you're welcome to at this point. But during this time of invitation, if you've been hiding Jesus to yourself and you need prayer with this, come up. We'll pray with you. Maybe you need that gift of Jesus, that gift of salvation. We can talk baptism. Whatever you're ready for, we're here for you. And even if it comes in afterwards, after service is over, we're still here. Seek one of us out. We'll be glad to help you along your way. Let's pray.